What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and I hope all of you guys are doing well. I myself am doing pretty good, except I'm like a month overdue for a haircut, as I've received many comments about, but I posted about that on Twitter, and I saw a bunch of you guys also were super overdue for haircuts, so we're all in this together. We're gonna all look like Chewbacca at the end of this. But anyway, one of the things that I've been noticing is that a lot of different Facebook groups for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or just people in Yu-Gi-Oh! In general have been posting things for us to sort of entertain ourselves with, and one of the ones that's going around right now that a lot of my friends have been doing is this what's your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster? Although now I realize it actually says, is this always a typo? It says what your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster. It's a this thing's been shared like thousands of times and no one seems to have corrected it. I'll correct it in the version that I do. But anyway, in today's video, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to fill this out, and maybe you guys can write in the comment section below what your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monsters are. It'll be kind of a fun way to do this, and I'll post this on Twitter as well, not only my own results, but also the blank sheet here so that you guys can fill it out, just as sort of something to do, keep us occupied. And one of the things that I've noticed while looking through some of my friends' answers is that this thing seems to like really date people in terms of like how old school they go with their answers. I know that like my friend Simo here, he posted a lot of older school cards, whereas some of the newer players are posting only new school cards. So I'm not really sure where I'm gonna fall for all these answers. I haven't come up with them ahead of time. I thought it'd be fun to not only just like show you guys my answers, but actually like find them in real time so you guys can see sort of my process, because I'm sure there's gonna be some close matchups here. But one of the ones that's not so close is Link monsters. You know, there's a lot of great Link monsters, but I think that by far, like, my favorite Link monster, just in terms of what I've played the most, what I've summoned the most, it has to be ALTERGEIST Hextia. I mean, it just has to be. I mean, there certainly are other good Link monsters out there. I'm not saying that there aren't, and even ones that I've used myself. Nightmare Phoenix is one that I've used a lot. Underclock Taker is a card I liked a lot while it was actually being played. Link Kribo is great, but come on, guys, it has to be ALTERGEIST Hextia. I'm not going to try to fill this entire thing with ALTERGEIST monsters. There's actually not too many spots where ALTERGEIST monsters would even fit in, but I think for Link monsters, if we're just going off of the sheer amount of games I've won off of a card, or the sheer amount of times that I've summoned it, it has to be ALTERGEIST Hextia. Pendulum is a weird category for me personally, though, because I've never really played like a Pendulum deck at a tournament. I picked up Metalfoes. I like the deck a lot, but I never actually got to play it at like a regional. I believe I played like Zodiac Metalfoes in one side event, so I think that that's going to be one where we're going to have to go through here and actually see which Pendulum monsters are out there and see if any one of them like sticks out to me. Maybe it's just one that I like a lot. I mean, I like Luster Pendulum. That was a cool card, but let's go through and just take a look at some of the Pendulums and see if I can get any ideas. I see here on the first page there's a Morphage Goliath, which I have played in Blue Eyes decks. I guess that sort of counts, but I don't know, Pendulums are kind of weird because I just really haven't played them that much. I know like that sounds weird. I mean, this one, the Crystal Beast cards are pretty cool, but once again, Archfiend Eccentric is a good card, but because I'm like so unfamiliar with actually playing a Pendulum deck, it's really just interesting to me though, like these Pendulum monsters, they never really appealed to me, or at least in the times when I would have considered playing a Pendulum deck, I just found another deck that I liked more. Yeah, none of these are really sticking out. So I think that for me, the Pendulum monsters are going to come down to that ridiculous PERFORMAPAL snake that I have never played in a real life deck, but that was really fun. I like the artwork of. Or, I don't even know, like Archfiend Eccentric is a good card, maybe a Metalfoes card. I feel like none of these are actually sticking out to me very much, so that makes me want to go with the one that sort of appeals to me the most, and that to me is PERFORMAPAL SWINCOBRA. I mean, is this, I don't know, it looks so weird on there, but I just love this card's artwork. I think it's hilarious, and we did get a couple funny moments with this card on live stream. I mean, maybe I'll change my mind on this one, but at least as like a placeholder, this is like the only one that I can say like, yeah, I like that card. I think his artwork is cool. I actually got some use out of it because I've played it. I mean, not playing it in real life, but playing it like on Link Evolution, I guess. It was in like the main protagonist deck for that arc several times for several of the duels. So I actually played this card like multiple times over the course of a few live streams, and I don't know, like it's really hard, but I'll think about that as we go along here. I might change it when we think about it a little bit more. Okay, so putting together like my favorite Xyz monsters has been really challenging. I narrowed it down to 15 choices, 12 of them that I'm a huge fan of, 3 of them I've kind of narrowed it down as top choices. And what's funny is that, you know, Xyz summoning is like by far my favorite mechanic. I've played so many different decks, rank 2 decks, rank 3 decks, rank 4 decks, even rank 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 decks. I love Xyz monsters. I think it's one of the best mechanics that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has ever added to the game. So it's really, really difficult even narrowing it down to 15 cards because I've just played so many different Xyz monsters. Some of these will probably date me a little bit more. I mean, Photon Papillary Operative is a card that probably like none of you have even heard of, but this card actually used to be very competitive. One of the best ranked 4 monsters for a long time, at least way back in the day when it first came out. Pretty early Xyz monster, but it saw play for like several years. It was a good piece of removal. But a lot of these cards, you know, I've played in so many different decks, and it was very difficult not putting Totally Awesome as one of my top 3 choices. But realistically, I've only played this card for like a couple different formats and a couple different events. And when I narrowed it down to the top 3, it had to be Dweller, Leviair, and Breaksword. So obviously 2 of these do go in the same deck. Leviair and Breaksword go into Phantom Knights or Burning Abyss, decks like that. But these are the ones that I've played over the course of many years. I've played in the most amount of tournaments, the most amount of different strategies, and these are the ones that I have the most fun using. Now, picking a winner was very, very difficult out of those 3, but I think what it comes down to, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, I think all 3 of these could have been like my favorite one, depending on the day that you ask me, but I think right now, Leviair the Sea Dragon is going to be my favorite one. And the reason is that this is the one that I've played in the most amount of competitive strategies, the most amount of casual strategies, the most amount of strategies in between there. You know, I've played this thing pretty much ever since I got my hands on a couple copies. When this card was first released, it was super expensive, like way more expensive than I could afford at the time. It was like $50 a copy, which seems crazy nowadays. But yeah, this card was a super expensive ultra/ultimate rare in one of the first Xyz sets, which was pretty exciting. Not just with Phantom Knights, but you could use this card for so many combos, and because it's not a hard once per turn, you could summon multiple next to each other and keep summoning banished cards, and I just love Leviair the Sea Dragon so much. I'm sure to some people it seems a little weird because I haven't played this card in a little while, but I've played it in so many different decks that I've had success with, like Phantom Knights and Medulces and stuff like that, and so many decks that I just had fun playing. I love Leviair the Sea Dragon. It's a really cool card, and I think it has to be, at least in my mind right now, I'm thinking it has to be my favorite Xyz monster by a small margin compared to Abyss Dweller and Breaksword. Okay, so going through this one, I think I realized that this dates me way more than like Xyz monsters, because a lot of these cards like haven't seen play in like 5 years. So I noticed when I was going through here that I still want to include like my first 3 like synchro monsters, the big boss monsters of my first competitive Yu-Gi-Oh deck, which was Infernities. So you'll see like 100 Eyes Dragon and Void Ogre Dragon, as well as Infernity Doom Dragon cards that have pretty much not seen any competitive play for a very, very long time. This one was pretty tough though. You know, this was a difficult decision, but I think that it really does have like 2 clear like number 1 and number 2 spots here. So we have first Cypher Lord Omega, and then also Brionac. Brionac was like my go-to favorite synchro monster for the longest time. Like this thing was like I still remember buying a Hidden Arsenal pack, just 1 pack. I don't remember which Hidden Arsenal this comes out of, but I bought 1 pack. My mom bought it for me, and I pulled a Brionac, and it was like the best day of my life. It was super exciting. I still have that Brionac, by the way. And then also, I mean, come on, Siphon Lord Omega is a card that I've played in way more decks than almost any other synchro monster in the game, and that's why, as much as it pains me to do so because I love Brionac, I think I have to give the number 1 spot to Siphon Lord Omega. I mean, of course, like this is a card that for a while was part of many cards that I was known for loving and putting in every deck. Siphon Lord Omega, Brilliant Fusion, Terror Top, stuff like that were in every single deck that I played as kind of like a meme, but also I just love those cards a lot. So naturally, I mean, Siphon Lord Omega is going to be like the number 1 spot. Brionac is still a fantastic card, one that I love a lot. You know, it was a huge moment for me pulling that copy of Brionac when it was super expensive because I didn't have a lot of money back then. So pulling a big card, pulling a card that's very competitive and very expensive when you don't have a lot of money, there's no better feeling in the world as far as Yu-Gi-Oh goes. But I think it just has to go to Siphon Lord Omega. It's such an iconic card for this channel. So with the fusion monsters here, I don't think there's like 15 of them, and I can truly say like I love these cards. I think they're really cool. They're some of my favorites. There certainly are a lot of fusion monsters that I like that weren't included out of these top 12 or whatever, but these are the ones that I feel the most comfortable saying these like some of my favorite fusion monsters in the entire game. And it's always difficult as well because like I'm playing a lot of Shaddolls right now. They're one of my favorite decks, so it's like how much am I using like my modern bias to say that Shaddolls are like one of my favorites right now? I mean, certainly I played them when they first came out and also right now, so they're obviously up there, but are they really like my favorites? Probably not, but they are still some of my favorite cards in the game, or favorite fusion monsters at least. So this one I feel comes down to 2 choices, one of which will not surprise you, one of which might surprise you if you don't know a lot about my first like upbringing in Yu-Gi-Oh, but obviously Gem Knight Seraphonite. I mean, come on you guys, Brilliant Fusion is by far my favorite card in the entire game. I mean, it's not going to make this list because it's not a monster card, but Gem Knight Seraphonite is obviously a big portion of why Brilliant Fusion is good, if not the biggest portion why Brilliant Fusion is good. But this is a card that I've played in a lot of decks and I love a lot. However, there is one other fusion monster that I feel can compete with this this, which might surprise a lot of you, and that is GAIA the Dragon Champion. So why does this one compete? Well, this was a card that I pulled out of my very first Yu-Gi-Oh pack way back in the day. I still have that copy of it, and it's just still holds such a sentimental place in my heart. It is such a cool card. It is just one of my favorite fusion monsters, and you know, when I really thought about it, when I really thought back to that moment and how I've kept that card all these years, even if I haven't played it competitively, this might surprise some of you, but I'm actually going to say that GAIA the Dragon Champion is my favorite fusion monster just because it still is so iconic to me as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, opening that pack and pulling the secret rare. Maybe I haven't played it nearly as much as I've played like Gem Knight Seraphine, which is actually a good card, but in terms of like my favorite card, I think it has to be GAIA the Dragon Champion. There are not very many ritual monsters just in general, but also I haven't played that many ritual decks. I have played a couple though, and the main ones that I played, you know, I've messed around with the Chaos Max before, I've messed around with Saphira, Queen of Dragons before, and Herald of Perfection in those decks, and also the Shino Baron and the Shino Baroness are cards that I've played quite a lot, you know, maybe not so much at tournaments, but just played in general, either online or with my friends. But I don't feel really strongly about any of these necessarily, except for, I mean, this feels kind of weird saying because I don't think the card is very good, but I don't know, it's gonna be crazy, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon is my favorite ritual monster, not because it's good, but just because it is so iconic, and you know, I've talked about it so much, and you know, I would just love to see this card actually succeed in a competitive metagame for like one reason or another. I know this card did see a tiny bit of success in Zodiac format because Zoo didn't have a great out to this card, but in general, you know, I'd like to see this card actually be competitive someday. I'm not sure if it's actually even possible. I still think if this thing and Chaos Form were searchable by pre-preparation of rights or preparation of rights, you know, one of the two, then this deck actually would be semi-viable as a rogue strategy. But unfortunately, you know, if you're a ritual-based strategy and you can't use at least one of those two cards, you're in a really rough spot. So while Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon is a card that many people think I really dislike, you know what, it's an okay card, and I think it's a pretty cool artwork as far as a Blue Eyes card goes, so I'll put it as my favorite ritual monster. Okay, at some point I just had to tell myself you have to stop adding normal monsters to this list, and what I found was that I don't know, like a lot of the old school normal monsters I have at least like one or two really fond memories of, because back in the day, you know, that's what you pulled out of packs. You pulled mostly normal monsters. So when I remember back to like when I was first playing Yu-Gi-Oh, like half of our decks back in the day were just all bad normal monsters, which is pretty funny. But I had to stop, so I cut myself off at 20 normal monsters that I all consider like really high up on the list that I have really fond memories of. Even narrowing this down to like 3 choices I feel like is pretty tough. I can narrow it down to like 4 kind of. So the 4 that I would narrow it down to would be Gem Knight Garnet, which is obviously a modern card. We have Frog the Jam, which by the way, Dueling Book does not have a Frog the Jam, it only says Slime Toe, but I guess that makes sense anyway. No reason to complain about that. Dark Blade, which is like my favorite normal monster back in the day by a long shot. You know, that was such a great card in old school Yu-Gi-Oh, at least on the lunch table or in recess or whatever. And then also Flying Penguin, which I pulled from a McDonald's pack back in the day. This card's like $10, I think, which is pretty crazy. But realistically, like any of these, I have a lot of fond memories with, so it's hard actually like picking one. But these 4, you know, they are the most iconic, and this is gonna be tough. It's really tough. I think all 4 of these, depending on the day that you asked me, could be considered like my favorite normal monster. Maybe Flying Penguin doesn't fall into that category as strongly as these 3 do, but at least right now, and this is gonna sound crazy because we not too long ago, just a couple entries ago, had Gem Knight Seraphonite lose to a really bad old school card that I liked a lot, but that's not very good. And once again, I think it's gonna happen here. So while a lot of people might expect me, and maybe even I expected myself at first, to pick Gem Knight Garnet as my favorite normal monster, I think it has to be not Slime Toad, but Frog the Jam. You know, I love this card. I have the ultra rare OSG copies, I have the English ones that are just commons, and this is just the best card. Not Slime Toad, but Frog the Jam, the original Frog the Jam, is perfect. This card is hilarious, and also it has such a long legacy of being mentioned in so many other card texts. It's just hilarious. I love this card. It looks ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and it's probably my favorite normal monster. Not by a long shot, but pretty much close with like Gem Knight Garnet and Dark Blade and Flying Penguin. But I think right now it edges it out just a little bit, just because, man, just looking at this thing, it's so funny. This is such a great card. Okay, so I was actually having so much fun. I'm sure this video is really long already, but I was having so much fun looking at old school Yu-Gi-Oh cards and new school Yu-Gi-Oh cards and just thinking about like which ones are my favorite, that it was taking a little bit too long, so I cut the video for a second. I added a whole bunch to this list. So first off, we have Gemini, Elemental Hero Neos Alias, which is a really fun card for a lot of hero decks, especially like the old school ones. Not so much like super old school, but like 2011, 2012 time is when this card was like really at its peak. For Toon Monsters, you know, I don't really like Toon Monsters that much, but Toon Goblin Attack Force is a card that I had back in the day and used to put in a lot of decks. Basically just a worse version of Goblin Attack Force, but I like the artwork. I think it's pretty cool. For Spirit Monsters, you know, I love Spirit Monsters. That was my first regional top, was with Spirits. Almost my first YCS top as well, but that deck's one of my favorites just of all time. It wasn't really that difficult narrowing that one down to Aratama just because it's the Stratos for Spirit Monsters, so it's always like a staple 3 of. For Union Monsters, there are not a lot of them, like 2 pages worth on Dueling Book, which is not very much considering that some of the things we looked at had like 17 pages or way more than that. But Machina GEARFRAME, which you know, I'm not like super big into Union Monsters. None of them really appealed to me that much. I never really played like ABCs, so those ones didn't really appeal to me. But this is a card that I played alongside Machina Fortress that actually was really good for a while, and even to this day, this card isn't that bad. I think Ryan Levine played it to a lot of success with the Orcus. I don't know if he played this card, but he definitely played Fortress, and that was pretty cool. So the Machina cards actually have seen some competitive play in sort of recent years. For Flip Monsters, there were a lot of choices there, but Night Assailant is one that I really liked back when I was a kid, so I figured putting on this list would make sense. You know, it's not the greatest card. It is still on the ban list though, because you can loop multiple copies, I guess, which doesn't really matter, but this card actually was pretty good back in the day. Night Assailant was also played alongside Tour Guide from the Underworld for a little bit. Not the most popular card with Tour Guide. I mean, Sangen's really good as well, but there was a point when you had like 2 Tour Guide, 1 Sangen, and 1 Night Assailant, if I remember correctly, and so this was actually played for a little bit, sort of recently in like 2012-ish era. Unizombie is the last card that I added here as my favorite tuner monster. I don't think that one was super close. I mean, Plague Spitter Zombie was up there, as well as some other more archetype-specific tuner monsters, but I've just played Unizombie in so many different decks, not even just zombie decks. I've played it in like Phantom Knights for a while, and it's one of my like all-time favorite cards just in general, so I think that naturally it's going to be like one of my favorite tuner monsters, if not my favorite tuner monster, at least at the moment. That brings us to the final categories, which are effect monster and overall favorite. Now, I've seen people answer this thing in 2 different ways. So one of the ways that I've seen people answer it is that the overall favorite is not part of the normal list. The other way is that people pick their overall favorite based on their other favorites. Now, I'm not sure which way is correct. I'm not sure which was the intended way for this particular sort of, I don't know if it's a worksheet or something, but for this particular activity, I'm not really sure which was like the intended way, but because I have so many different effect monsters that I could say are my favorites, I'm going to say that I'm going to put the overall favorite as like my overall favorite monster card just in general, and the effect monster will be a different card, even if they're both effect monsters. I just think it's the easiest way to do that so there's no duplicates on the entire list. Okay, so first off, my favorite effect monster, and I'm going to say here that I don't think it's actually possible to narrow down my favorite effect monster in the entire game, even if you take out all the synchros and fusions and like seize monsters and ritual monsters that are all effect monsters, and you just focus on pure effect monsters, not tuners, not flips, not anything else. Even when you do that, I think it's really difficult to narrow it down just because that's such a broad category. Right now though, I think one of the more iconic ones that I'm thinking of would be Swap Frog. You know, I love frogs. I played them not only like recently, I mean a couple of years ago, but not only when they're like a totally awesome deck, but I played them back in the day as well when Swap Frog first came out. It was a super budget friendly deck because Swap Frog, Dupe Frog, and Rodentonen were all commons. Treeborn Frog was reprinted a whole bunch of times and it was really cheap as well, so that was a really cool engine to put into almost any different strategy. And I think Swap Frog is one of the cards in terms of effect monsters over the course of my entire Yu-Gi-Oh career, over all of my history with Yu-Gi-Oh, it's probably one of the effect monsters that I've played the most amount of times. I don't think that is necessarily what the criteria for your favorite monster should be for any of these categories, but at least in this case, I love Swap Frog. I love it a lot. You guys already know that, and I've also played it a lot, so it makes sense to put it as my favorite effect monster. Maybe there's other options out there. There are actually plenty of other choices that I could have put, but I think right now at least I'm thinking Swap Frog. Which brings me to my overall favorite monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! And looking at this list, you know, I see a lot of cards that I really enjoy that are my favorites, that I've played a lot, and it's just like, what can I really say is like my overall favorite monster card in in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I thought it was really difficult, but I think it's actually not too difficult to figure out. It's going to be ALTERGEIST MELUSEEKER, and it's not Multi-Faker. You know, I love Multi-Faker, one of the best cards in the deck, the card that really makes ALTERGEIST work. However, ALTERGEIST MELUSEEKER is just, it's everything. You know, it's an engine card, it's a breaking board card, it's a going first card, it's a going second card. It is everything to me. It makes all the combos happen in ALTERGEIST. It is the #1 card that makes people scared when you just go second and you just normal summon an ALTERGEIST MELUSEEKER. Like, people just freak out. You know, Dark Ruler no more, no one cares about that. Lightning Storm, no one cares about that. Normal summon MELUSEEKER, people freak out. But I love ALTERGEIST MELUSEEKER. I love ALTERGEIST. I obviously have one other ALTERGEIST card on this list. I think honestly, like, Marionetta could have been like my favorite effect monster if you asked me on a different day, but I think that it's not fair to put like 3 ALTERGEIST cards on this list. But I think that when it really comes down to things, ALTERGEIST MELUSEEKER is definitely my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh monster in the entire game, which feels weird saying out loud, but you know, I've praised this card. I've been praising this card for the past like 2 years straight, so naturally I feel like it's going to be my favorite card in the entire game, at least as far as monster cards go. And I don't really care about the apostrophe S. I mean, yes, it looked a little bit silly, but it's an honest mistake, and I just think it's more so funny how many people shared this thing and didn't really read it and notice that, or just didn't care, because who actually cares about that kind of stuff except for me? But I don't 100% know who started this. Here's a little logo here. I remember I did see on Facebook the original post, but I can't seem to find it anymore. I just don't remember the name at all. So if one of you guys knows, let me know in the comment section, and then hopefully everyone else can go check out their Facebook page, because this was a really, really cool idea, and I hope they do one for spells and traps. I'm pretty sure they will, because it's been a huge success. So I think they want to get more people doing this, and it's just sort of something fun and lighthearted for people to do while we can't play physical Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway, though, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Make sure to go on Twitter and fill us out yourselves and share them with me so I can see what you guys feel about your favorite monster cards, because honestly, this has been a ton of fun and a great way to spend a couple hours in the afternoon. I'll see you later, though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.